back to the DCS SITREP. I'm your host, Prickly Hedgehog. Thanks for tuning in again for another update on news and information about DCS World. And if you were paying attention last week, you will have noticed that the initial early access date for the F-15E, which was slated for February 3rd, was delayed to February 15th. A nice little nod there from RAZBAM to the date, February 15th. And ED indicated that the team are in the final validation and testing phase for the aircraft. The pre-order will also feature a 30% discount. As we said, it is going to be the 15th of February. And then once that pre-order begins, they anticipate that the aircraft will be released into early access a few months later, possibly sooner. So that would give us an April or March date, I think, at the earliest. So we'll have to wait and see if the validation and testing phase goes smoothly and we can get our hands on this amazing aircraft, which has, I guess, also been in the news lately too, and been a discussion point for a few podcasts and YouTube interviews recently, including with Ward Carroll and Paco Benitez, and also been the discussion on the Afterburn Podcast as well. This aircraft has been around for many, many years. It continues to fly, and there is some discussion in the real world about whether it's going to remain a two-seater or a single-seater, and whether or not there's going to be any kind of delineation between those C models that we're familiar with as the air dominance fighter, or it's going to be a combination of those things with the F-15X. The world is an interesting place, as we saw, because an F-22 Raptor, renowned as being one of the most dominant fighter aircraft in history right now, its first air-to-air kill apparently was a balloon, Chinese spy balloon, which occurred over the weekend. Sometimes real-world events are stranger than fiction, and yeah, DCS is kind of interesting to me right now with these discussions, particularly with the Fighter Pilot podcast, the Ward Carroll interviews, and also, as I said, the Afterburn podcast interviews. The bro chats are really, really interesting. There's a lot of candid information that comes out, and a lot of discussion I've noticed between the Gen 4 aircraft and the tactics of those aircraft, which, if you're familiar with air warfare, are still pertinent, because we have in the real world Gen 4 old aircraft, if you like, still flying today, well beyond what I think perhaps the Air Force ever intended. And this weird bridging, if you like, between those Gen 4 aircraft and the Gen 5 plus aircraft, which were designed to replace them. And interesting discussions too about the fact that we still have relatively old weapons, AMRAAMs, Sidewinders, so on and so forth, that Gen 5 aircraft are using, and what that means in terms of tactics and all the rest of it. So it's some really, really interesting bridges going on between the game and this new technology and overarching themes of tactics, air warfare, and so on and so forth, especially with real-world conflicts going on, conflicts between superpowers and all this kind of stuff. It kind of fascinates me how much integration there is and discussion points there are. Not that DCS is in any way necessarily reflective of those tactics and those weapons and things like that. I get a lot of questions about that kind of stuff, and I think you need to look at that disclaimer at the beginning of the load up, which says that none of the weapon developers are directly involved in the production, if you like, and the development of those weapons in game. They are there and designed purely as entertainment, and I think that gets overlooked quite a lot, where people start coming up with questions to me about, this is not very realistic, why aren't we seeing this? Some of the hype, if you like, attached to realism in DCS world needs to be dampened down just a little bit. And that's not a shot at the game in any way, or a shot at the simulated aspects of the game. Rather, it's just there are limitations to how much Eagle Dynamics can recreate real-world complex systems, weapon systems, and also I would include their complex electronic warfare systems. They are simulations, if you like, best guesses based on information that they have to give us a simulated experience and not necessarily what is occurring in the real world. So with that disclaimer out of the way, a little caveat there, I'm still very, very excited about the work that Eagle Dynamics is doing, and I think we are going to be in for a real treat with this F-15E Strike Eagle. RAZBAM, Ron Zambrano, said in a podcast towards the end of last year that this will be the most sophisticated aircraft introduced to Eagle Dynamics' DCS world environment to date, notwithstanding, of course, the arrival of the Typhoon sometime in the distant future, hopefully near future. So we've got our work cut out for us, and as I said before, even with the entertainment tag caveat added to it, it's still going to be an incredibly challenging aircraft to fly and get to grips with, and DCS World, if done properly, is still a pretty challenging game, and interfacing with it does take a lot of seat time and a lot of understanding, and that's what is, in some cases, a lot of the fun. So again, just to refresh, 30% discount on this pre-order aircraft, and it will be available hopefully in March, possibly April, hopefully no later than that. One of the really cool things about this introduction, and this is a little bit of a first here, I think also for RAZBAM and the Eagle Dynamics DCS World game, and that is they're going to include a ebook here. It's known as Be Afraid of the Dark. You're not afraid of the dark, are you? And this is written by Steve Davies, and this particular ebook is going to cover the Strike Eagle's inception, development, entry into service, and operational history up to 2002. And the variant we're talking about here is the Suite 3E standard. Remember that the Air Force uses the term suite, while the Navy generally refers to their variants as blocks. Now, the book is based on extensive original research by the author, therefore, at Boeing's Historical Archives, which is pretty cool. Got hold of primary documents, interviews with the men and women who turned the idea of the air-to-ground optimized Eagle into a reality, and also access to the frontline crews who rode the aircraft into combat between 1990 and 2002. The book totals around 100,000 words of insight, technical discussion, and an anecdote, as well as gloriously illustrated 150 color images to embellish our reading experiences. I'm really looking forward to seeing this. Now, this book, as mentioned, was authored by Steve Davies, who is a highly reputed military aerospace defense writer, host of the 10% True podcast. And if you're not familiar with that term, that is any stories, I think anecdotally is the term here, any stories told by a fighter pilot must at least be 10% true. Davies is also the occasional co-author and contributor to DCS campaigns, which is awesome, and he has revised portions of the original text and reimagined the design of the book for this unique partnership between 10% True, RAZBAM, and Eagle Dynamics. So that is a first, I think, for the three teams there, and I'm really excited about that concept to embellish the introduction of a module in the game, which, let's be real, they're not cheap. And having this extra cool stuff kind of reminds me a little bit of the manual that came with EF 2000 many, many years ago, and was a pretty decent illustrated book covering a whole lot of tactics and basic principles of combat and so on and so forth, which I thought was really cool. So I like seeing this kind of thing now. It's all electronic these days. We don't get printed copies of stuff. Nonetheless, this is going to be a nice introduction, and as Eagle Dynamics rightly point out, it's going to make this flying experience a little bit richer and more fulfilling. So he also plans, Steve Davies that is, to revisit the text to include developments and operations for the F-15 between 2000 and 2023. That will be a second part of Be Afraid of the Dark, and I will post a link to his website here so that you can check that out for yourself. Now, with this being the most sophisticated aircraft to date being introduced, we're going to need some instruction, I think, and there are a lot of us out there who enjoy flying these sophisticated aircraft without any formal instruction whatsoever. Kind of figure it out as you go, which is not recommended, and certainly not standard Air Force and Navy doctrine. That's why we have NATOPS and other trainings, months of ground school and all that kind of stuff, which we just bypass and jump straight into our favorite jets and basically screw around. So if you're looking for more formalized mechanisms to aid your flight experience and learning experiences about the F-15, remember that Not So has teamed up with RAZBAM, and he is a former Wizzo, and there is a series of instructional videos on YouTube, and I will post a link to that so that you can get your hands on those if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this aircraft before it comes out. The other embellishment here is that Baltic Dragon is producing a interactive manual for the aircraft on top of all of these things. This sort of harks back, like I said, to some older games, and I kind of miss those manuals and all the flashy pizzazz that came with these aircraft, which I feel, they deserve, because they're not easy things to learn to fly, and even watered down, if you like, even without all the G experiences and all the rest of it. There's a lot of seat time that needs to occur before you get good, even halfway passable as a as a virtual pilot in DCS world, if you really want to do things properly. And a lot of us are flying blind, so these kinds of tutorials and manuals and things really help get us up to speed in the absence of more formal flight training processes. So again, let me know what you think of this. This is one of the biggest, I think, introductions of an aircraft into DCS world, notwithstanding, of course, the F4 that we're all looking forward to as well. There was a nice little snippet from Heat Blur where Ward Carroll has been flying with VR lately in the F-14 and getting a real kick out of it. And Heat Blur said, well, we're going to have to get you in the cockpit of the F4 then as well. So that was a nice little nod to perhaps where they're at with things. Hopefully we'll see that aircraft as well. But the F-15E Strike Eagle is really dominating the headlines right now, and it's possibly, I think, going to set a little bit of a new benchmark for aircraft introduction into DCS world, and I'm excited about what they're doing here and what it means for the future of DCS world. Now, on a personal front, changing tack here as we wrap things up. For me, it's been a torrid couple of weeks with work taking up pretty much all of my time. I basically worked almost 12 days straight without a break to reward myself with the overtime money, which was nice, but I do value my sleep a lot more sometimes. That's sometimes the way things go, but I had a half day off and then I had to go back to work. It wasn't really a day off, but I rewarded myself with all that overtime money with a 4080 graphics card. Not that I needed it for DCS World, but I was doing a little bit of future proofing from the 3080 that came with a system that I purchased. 4080s require a lot of power, and the non-modular power supply, which I didn't realize it was non-modular, and that was my fault, I should have checked ahead of time, did not have the 3 PCI Express cables that I needed to plug in effectively with an adapter to the 4080. And I know a lot of YouTubers have already commented on the not the best design, if you like, of the plugin for that cable, which is on the case side, if you like. I guess seals the case up, prevents you from electrocuting yourself or the cat who wants to climb into the open case. For those of you that run open cases, maybe you don't have those issues. But anyway, that cable juts out, and it's not in the best place. And I know Jay's 2 cents has talked about this, and therefore what we end up doing in most cases is bending those cables to reroute them through the computer and up into the PSU. Well, of course, with the power that is required to power these cards, we all have seen these horror stories about those bent cables leading to fires and meltdowns of either the PSU or the cable housing there, if you like, or those bent cables causing extra heat, causing meltdowns of these cards under load. So yeah, I've encountered that little issue right now. The glass panel that normally seals the computer up and keeps dust out and stuff out of there is not able to be used. So I'm going to have to buy yet another cable. They range in price from, say $25 So it's become, essentially what I'm trying to say, it's become an expensive little project. A new PSU was therefore required, and now a new cable is potentially required to fix this little issue so that I don't have an open case. I'm not massively concerned about the open case, as long as the cat doesn't get in there, which somebody poked their head in there the other day to check out what was new, which didn't please me. So yeah, what was an expensive purchase has become really expensive, and there goes the overtime money. Was pretty quickly gobbled up. So I didn't need the 4080 for necessarily just running DCS, and of course I'm looking forward to seeing the multi-threading, which is really going to enhance the purchase that I made, but it was primarily for the video editing and production processes, if you like, of the DCS SITREPs. And that was the mentality for it. That was the primary rationale. And of course, to enhance my DCS flight experiences. I will bring you more updates on that as time goes on. Yesterday was my first day off after 12, like I said, and I didn't really have a whole lot of time to fly. I was a little tired at the end of it, and I wasn't really focused on enjoying my flying. It was more just making sure the thing didn't blow up and break down on me. So more testing is going to have to occur before I can definitively say it was a worthwhile purchase. Thus far, it looks good. I mean, the game looks good. There's no question about that. So FPS and all that kind of stuff, those benchmarks will be maybe the subject of separate videos. For now, yeah, it was probably worth the purchase. But yeah, do your homework before you make these impulse purchases like I did. There was a little bit of a mistake on my part, and I kind of regret that. We'll see if it was worthwhile. I think maybe when the multi-threading comes out and all the rest of it, I'm going to be happy with it, because let's be real, DCS right now is not optimized for modern hardware, and this is the oft discussed topic for DCS World and getting the best out of it. Yeah, we'll see how things go. I'm looking forward to that multi-threading. My guess is, based on Wags' videos, who's already showcased it, we will see it possibly in the summertime if everything's going according to plan. Hopefully not too much later than that. I'm really looking forward to seeing that in game, because it really is going to boost our flight experiences with DCS World, and it needs it. Especially if we're going to get the solo campaign or the dynamic campaign. In the interim, there's some really cool campaigns coming out. I enjoyed a little bit of Speed and Angels recently, and I'm hoping to get back into that. But time has not allowed for much in the way of flying, work, life, and all the rest of it. So, yeah, there you have it. All right, a little bit of rambling there from me. I apologize. It's been a long 2 weeks. I'm exhausted. Thanks for putting up with me. Let's make that do. Thanks for tuning in again for another DCS SITREP. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment in the comment section below. If you'd like to support the channel a little bit more, consider the super thanks button. Appreciate all the support. It's going to be an exciting year. Let me know what you think about the F-15E Strike Eagle. And we'll see you next time on the DCS SITREP.
Man, after being on the boat for the last 2.5 months, this land is starting to hurt my eyes.